Well, the system's been rebooted and I've paused the boot menu so we can look at actually editing it here during the boot process. And the vast majority of time, that's what I do when I'm trying to modify GRUB. Typically, I'm coming in here to set some parameter to go into a different run level. We'll talk about run levels in another video coming up, but I want to show you a couple of important things you can do here in the GRUB menu. So once again, let's go. We're going to look down here. Let me get my pen going. So what I'm looking at this E right here. I want to edit the menu items that are available. So I'll press escape, get in here, and I'll press the E button. All right, now typically the line that you will edit is the second line, and it looks horrible. It's long, it's got lots of cryptic stuff in there. It looks very, very dangerous. Most of the time, what you're going to want to do is go to the very end of that line and specify a run level that you want to go into. So let's go there and take a look at this. Let's go hit the down arrow. I'll press E again, and it takes me directly to the end of the line. I'll go back just to show you what it looks like. And this is the same line we saw in the GRUB comp file. Notice it's talking about things like keyboards and key tables and where it's going to find the kernel and certain languages that are being set up, where the root file system is. So it has lots of parameters here. I'll press the N key to go back to the end. Now, typically I come in here when I want to start the system in a different run level, and there's a number of different reasons we may want to do that. One, which you probably want to keep in mind, is let's say I set a password and I haven't logged on for a little while and I've forgotten the password. Well, as long as you haven't passworded GRUB itself, which we talked about in the comp file, you can actually come in here and tell it to go to a run level. The run level you would typically go to for something as simple as changing a password is run level 1, or it can be specified as single, right? You can type single here, or you can just put the number 1. Either one of those will boot you into run level 1. And what that is, it really is a configuration level. So if you think of safe mode in the Windows world where you can go in and make changes and network parameters aren't set and applications aren't all loaded, that's exactly what's going on in here. So this would be a mode. I can go into this mode, and if I press enter here, that will save that, and then I will press B to boot the system. So I pressed enter, saved the change I made, press B to boot. The system will go through the boot process, and what it should do once it gets to the end of this is just drop me out a prompt. You'll notice that it does not request a password from me, and that's because I'm going into single mode. Now this is something you want to think here for a second, because if somebody else has access to the machine, physical access to the machine, they can do the same thing you just did. And so they can boot into single mode or init1, and they can go and change your password, a root's password, and get root access to this machine. So that's why a lot of times GRUB is password protected, because we don't want people to be able to do this. But it is a nice thing to be able to do. So all I would have to do here to change password is type the password utility, press enter, and it's going to ask me to change root password. And you can see up on top, also right up here, at the very top of the screen, you can see that it says we're actually in single user mode. All right, I'm not going to change my password. I don't want to do that. What I'll do now is reboot the system because I want to get back to GRUB. Alrighty, so here is the initial GRUB menu again. So single mode, definitely one you want to remember, and we'll be using that throughout or different points of the class. Now by default, this system is set to boot into a GUI environment. And that's fine because we're investigating all aspects of Linux. But most of the time you want your servers to boot into a GUI-less environment. And the reason, think about it, less resources being used, less memory, and less chance that something's going to happen where the system will fail and have to be rebooted. Now, that's typically not a problem with Linux because it really separates the graphical interface from the operating system itself. But we can tell the system to boot into a non-graphical environment by editing that line. Press E again. E, go down here, E, I'm right here, and what I can say is go into run level 3. Run level 3 is everything the system's supposed to do without the GUI, so no GUI interface. That's one we can go into. Now, another one I want to show you, I showed you single mode, and that's where you can go in to fix some things that are happening. But when things are really bad, when things have gone horrible in Linux, you typically don't want anything starting up. And if that's the case, you may want to go into what's really considered emergency mode, if you will, and that's about as low as you can go. And what we can do here is type init./bin/bash. We know what bash is, right? Bash is the shell. Well, I'm basically saying bypass init and just drop me at the bash shell, because something so bad is going on in this system that going into this level will basically stop almost everything from loading. Even the file system will be loaded in read-only. So I'll press enter here, and then I'll press boot so you can see this happen. And what will happen, it will boot to the same thing, but this time you won't see the root prompt showing up, which you see down there in the bottom, no red prompt. It just says bash, which means I am at the lowest I could possibly go. And from here, this is where I will rescue the environment if I need to, if I can get here. If I can't get to this, then I'm booting to a CD, DVD, and I'm going to rescue the system that way. But that's an important one to remember. I've used it many, many times. Good one to put in your book. All right, well, that's an introduction to GRUB and looking at the different aspects of GRUB. Next, we'll be looking at run levels. We've talked about them. What are they? Where are they? How do we change them? There's a number of different things we can do with that, and we'll be looking at that next.